Okay, I'm hoping it's recording.
Yep, I got the notice.
Yep.
Well, when I heard about this, I appreciate it because that section probably needs more work than any other section. And Ned was trying to distill some of those comments or that wetland section. So you were right on in terms of needing to do that. I'm going to stop talking and let you guys talk.
I mean, it makes sense. That's what the green team has been focusing on recently is education and whatnot surrounding wetlands and preservation of them. And so it's understandable that that was a big part of that section. You guys aren't alone. City of Lansing was the exact same way. They appreciated any comments we provided. They said that their water section they knew should be more robust, but they just weren't sure what to do. I'll just quickly kind of show you what they had originally. They still have this posted on their site. And so they have each section broken down into a different category, which I'm guessing you guys do too. And so their water, main background, some of their current efforts, and then it goes into the recommendations, which seems pretty similar for you guys too. This is their sustainability plan.
Oh, okay, that's their sustainability plan. Okay.
Yep. And so what I did was I took that information, kind of threw in some additional wording for them to use, just to kind of touch on some of those things because you guys are part of East Lansing Meridian Water Sewer Authority and even a little bit of BWL. And you work on protecting our groundwater. You protect our drinking water, huge thing. So we want to incorporate that in there. We added current efforts and then included an entire section for an objective that was actually bringing some of the terminology from the City of Lansing's most recent updated wellhead protection plan into here. So I just use that to kind of tailor it and try and fit the same tone that the city was going for their plan. Currently, the wellhead protection team for City of Lansing is hiring a consultant. We just are finishing scoring for the proposals today, and we should have a set hiring person as of March 1st. We have a grant, and part of that grant is putting $10,000 towards having the consultants develop draft language for the City of Lansing's master plan to incorporate wellhead language. And the goal is that this is going to be a stepping stone for the region that we can then repurpose this language, having it very neutral that any community can then bring that on. The goal is to have that language drafted and developed and submitted to the City of Lansing by end of March. So we'll be able to get you guys what that example is as well.
So where did that grant fund come from, Lauren?
Yep. So Eagle has a source water protection grant. It used to be known as wellhead protection grant.
Yeah.
But they're trying to be more neutral and whatnot. East Lansing Meridian has gotten in the past. They had it in 2020, which is what we did to update the wellhead protection viewer. I will throw in a plug right now for all of you guys because this might be related. We are having a training session on March 23rd for the wellhead protection viewer and our updated environmental permits checklist, which helps with site plan review stuff. And so it's going to be a free training we're having at our facility March 23rd. Giannis should have gotten that. I think Leroy, you might be on our email list. I don't know. I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure my guys are coming.
Beautiful. But yeah, it's free tailored tools for you guys to use. So we want to get the word out. But yeah, so it's taking advantage of that grant. The grant that Lansing got was $70,000 because it depends on your capacity for your service area, and they reached that top capacity. And so we're doing the master plan language and then also some outreach stuff as well.
Okay.
So that's what that full grant is going to be going towards. But the outreach is going to be pushed a bit further out. The draft master plan language was the priority for the quick timeline turnaround, just to be accommodating of what like the city was doing. And so we should be able to get you guys that too. I did let them know that we were kind of looking into this, was sharing it with, and they were super supportive.
Awesome. So
this might be a bit of a stretch, but is it is it possible that they could do a quick review of the GSI code manual as well, because it seems quite related? The thing that, taking what Cliff prepared as sort of a regional template for green infrastructure codes, and maybe I'm asking too much here, but it just seems like the two are related. And
they definitely are, but it's hard because that would not be an eligible activity under the grant for the team to do, because it's strictly drinking water, and more specifically groundwater well stuff rather than stormwater infrastructure. But I can definitely get the word out that you guys would appreciate a look through, and maybe they can do it on the side, but as like an official grant activity or a team activity, I don't think that would fall under what Eagle would allow.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, Tim. Go ahead.
Oh.
No, you're fine. I was just thinking, I was starting to pontificate how sort of we incorporate this stuff. And so if you guys are really talking about having language by the end of March, sort of generalized language, I mean, obviously we'd love to see that in terms of including it in our master plan, because I think right now so what we're kind of looking at for our plan, and Brian, jump in here at however you want. We've kind of taken this approach of, the master plan should not be dipping into the other plans as much as complementing them or referencing, however we want to do that, because we don't want to take away from the work that's being done for the climate sustainability plan. We don't want to take away from the parks master plan. But we recognize that this stuff needs to be, there's a reason it's called the comprehensive plan. It needs to be comprehensive.
Yep. One thing I would say, and I definitely agree that you don't want to constantly recreate the wheel. So I ended up hosting a meeting a few weeks back with regional team leaders for wellhead protection, and one of the things that they commented on that is just a general weakness over the entire state program is incorporation of wellhead protection into emergency management and response and things like that.
That's interesting.
So like if the best example that we have to date is East Palestine, Ohio. And if something like that happened, do our police and firefighters know that they need to check to see if there's wells in the area that could really put the entire region's drinking water at risk if this stuff gets into it?
Yeah.
And so finding opportunities to tailor that a bit more, I think that's what we're going to try and see if we can bring some language into that as well. Because I definitely agree, climate plans can really touch on like the core, just basic incorporation of what the community's wellhead plan is. But you can't really touch emergency management as much all the time in that category.
Well, and our chief, who's currently updating that stuff, is really wants to be as comprehensive from an emergency management perspective as possible. So I don't think it'd be much of a stretch to get him to incorporate some language in the next, probably the next update, because I think he's officially got it approved now for this cycle, but include some stuff in the next cycle.
Yeah, because my plan is to, and I'd love the chance to talk with him at some point. My plan is to try and connect our wellhead leaders with those key emergency response leaders to kind of discuss. One of the things that I learned from East Lansing's hazard mitigation coordinator, he said that what would be great is having some type of kind of like, hey, this happened, so we automatically respond doing this, this, and this. So what is that thing that takes off in their brains to make them go check it all? Because they don't really have that right now. A good example is City of Charlotte. Every um fire truck has an actual map of their wellhead protection zone in it, but no one ever looks at it ever.
We did the same thing in Howell. We made sure
Yeah.
all the fire departments, the fire trucks had. We had a couple things on there. It was wellhead protection. It was, I want to say it was the not the tornado sirens, but it was something else like if you're in this area, this needs to be checked kind of thing.
Yeah.
It might have been the radio towers. But yeah, that's a good point. You sometimes you overwhelm those guys with information, and maybe that's not the best approach. Maybe the approach is it's something on the back end where, okay, it's triggered. You guys need to be aware of this.
Yeah. And so we need to figure out what that trigger is. And so I think getting that communication going, and then once we establish that good process, I think that'd be a great opportunity to then in the future incorporate that into that part of the master plan.
Yeah, that makes sense. So our waters through East Lansing
Mm-hmm.
What did they do with their grant? I don't remember 2 years ago.
Yep. So the grant was actually to update the wellhead protection viewer. So
Oh, that's right.
Yep. So now it's like the full integrated free application connected to every single data source it seems like that Eagle and the state of Michigan have. So I know I've been talking with Joel and Giannis. They're up for updating the plan. So we're gonna try and start working on figuring out that approach.
So in terms of sort of the next, so clearly we want to put something in our master plan to acknowledge this. It's clearly going to be part of the climate sustainability plan. So talk to me for a second, Lauren, like what is the next step? Because what we're trying to make sure that we do in the comp plan, Brian and I just talked about this morning, actually, what is the measurable going forward for some of these goals and objectives that we have? Because one of the problems we have with the current plan is it's pretty clearly like the stock language that X consultant used 5, 6, 7 years ago. And there's no, like, I can't follow up. I can't report on anything because it's just this vague language. So like, what becomes, in your mind at least, the next step after we incorporate this into our planning documents?
Yeah. So what's really helpful about the wellhead protection plan program in general is that there's 7 key areas, and whatever you put down in your plan, it needs to be some type of measurable thing. So it's not just language saying, oh, we're going to protect our wellhead. Like, what are we doing? So in the recommendation that we put in the Lansing Sustainability Plan, these ones, so identify existing and future threats to groundwater resources. You can do that. You can identify potential contamination source locations, things like that easily. And if there's new things come in the future, you can do that. Educate the community. You can do that by measuring website visits. If you guys post about wellhead protection, groundwater stuff, the Groundwater Management Board has a bunch of resources Meridian can take and post on their site like they do for GLRC. And so you can measure it that way, coordinating with other organizations, wellhead protection teams. You guys are already doing that. That's a measurable thing. Joel sits on the Lansing Wellhead team. East Lansing and Meridian are both on GMB, which coordinates regionally for wellhead protection. Plan for water supply emergencies. That's something you guys already have, I believe, in your emergency response plan. So just making sure that it's up to date. Another measurable one. and then incorporating wellhead protection into the planning process. And so you guys can even include the fact that you're sending staff to this training session for them to be able to learn how to use the environmental permits checklist, have that listed on your site. That's another measurable thing you guys can include as well.
That's helpful. Because I'm just trying to keep in the back of my mind as we do all this stuff that, okay, how am I gonna report out on this in, 1, 3,
Yeah, you
5
don't
year
just want it to be a
increments?
document sitting on the shelf.
Which, yeah, I mean, COVID aside, the current plan is tough to, there's some big things that we've done, which
Mhm.
hilariously weren't actually a goal and objective. It was just a piece of the plan that we've got like the work at Hazlitt and Marsh, like theoretically isn't really referenced in the goals. Like it's got a couple of pages in the document, and that's like that has become like the thing that we've all run
Yeah.
with.
Yeah,
So
sometimes you just gotta take advantage of the opportunities that are thrown your way, thanks to COVID shoving money down everyone's throats.
yeah,
And you're just like, this might not be our original plan, but it's gonna be great. We're gonna do it. Yes.
yeah,
A similar challenge with the sustainability plan. 5 years ago, some of the accomplishments were not predicted or included. It seems like the plan, whether it's a master plan or a sustainability plan, needs to be more of a vision, a general vision, and then the action and the opportunities are pursued as they arise. And you don't try and predict every little thing or even predefine every little step you're going to take.
Mhm.
It's just more of a vision, and it becomes useful as a visioning tool. But I could be wrong. I mean, it's good to have measurables and
Mhm.
think about how you're going to evaluate success. But anyway, it's just a challenge.
Oh, I agree. And I think that's what's really helpful about Wellhead is that they have those like 7 categories. And so literally any activity that goes towards protecting drinking water in Meridian counts towards wellhead protection because they're one and the same. So even if the wording isn't directly the same, it still falls under one of those categories. So we can even make some of the wording a bit more general and not as specific, but documented like, hey, even though this isn't specifically laid out, we can use these measurables to then report out at the end.
that tracks.
As far, do you have the edits to the Lansing's climate sustainability plan? Because we're not ashamed to recycle what you've already done. And
Yeah, no, I can send them over. And I can definitely work with talk with Ned, meet with him, see what he has, and we can kind of work together. And I know we're trying to figure out the most recent version of Elmswoods Wellhead Protection Plan. Bless Clyde, but apparently he just didn't tell Joel where everything was located at. Surprise. So I'll probably look into that too to get some additional possible wording, but I can definitely send this example over to you guys so you can just get a basics of what we included in the sustainability plan.
one other sort of random question. When we recently had a water emergency in the township,
Yeah.
where the Elmswood had to shut down to 40% or whatever capacity,
Mhm.
there was a temporary conservation ultimatum,
Yep.
and then a couple days later, it's like, okay, it's okay to use as much water as you want to now, and without a lot of like awareness of
Mhm.
water conservation. Is water conservation even an objective as far as wellhead protection goes, or is that something we should even mention, or is that just um, something we just that
It's
varies depending on who's interested?
it's hard because in general with sustainability you want to promote water conservation, things like that, because overall it's just good. You're not using as much of your resources and it helps to protect it for and have it around for longer. But on the flip side, and this is something that has been a big conversation at G&B several times, um, regionally in the 80s, water quantity was a huge issue and making sure that we had enough to supply the region. Now we've kind of switched to quality issues. We have more than enough because of all these conservation measurements. And so that can actually make it a bit harder for communities that rely heavily on that consumption to help fund infrastructure development and improvements and things like that for the drinking water system. And so you want to promote that water conservation, but at the same time, you don't want to reduce the small amount of funding that is available to water providers to try and make sure that their systems are up to date and providing the cleanest water that they can. Luckily, we are in a once in a lifetime, well, once in a generation funding opportunity for infrastructure, but from so many reports, it's still just a drop in the bucket. So that's something that we're still battling with, especially post-COVID, when the funding source dropped even more with everyone staying at home.
Interesting. Thank you for addressing that. I just, it seems like in the Great Lakes state, we want to sort of be an example of, you know, reducing water
Definitely.
consumption, but at the same time, we want effective and functional water treatment plants.
Exactly.
So, bit of a catch-22, maybe.
Exactly. Even in general, just like, even if you're not promoting water conservation, promoting good maintenance of your home items is a huge thing. Making sure that you clean your aerators all the time, that helps with water quality concerns. Obviously not as much in the Lansing area, but knowing like what your plumbing is in the house in case of concerns with lead and copper, and focusing on those water quality aspects of general maintenance. Meridian doesn't have as many private wells, but even private well maintenance, septic maintenance, things like that, that also helps to go a long way in protecting those resources to last as long as possible.
Not to dominate this conversation, but there's also a big piece, you know, a lot of our energy use is used in water treatment at the other end of the tap, down the line, and we spend a ton of energy pumping not just fresh water, but wastewater. So, and we don't necessarily, you know, we get that money replenished, but anyway, it's just sort of something to ponder. So,
Oh yeah.
What other questions did you have, Tim? I don't want to take too much.
No, you're fine. This has been a good conversation from my perspective. I mean, at least it's especially good to hear that there's potentially some, I don't want to say boilerplate, but certainly some language that we can utilize to then as a jumping off point coming. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I mean, any thoughts from your end, Brian? I'm going to make you talk.
Fair enough. No, I'll be blunt. Wellhead protection is something that's just kind of fell through the cracks. So I'm just kind of trying to this is all coming at once, very coincidentally, as things do. Leroy likes the word serendipity. I like the idea of putting consistent language in our plan, consistent with the region. I think that's a good idea. As far as water issues go, I think that it's real easy for us to take for granted our situation. I just read an article this year. I didn't know this until literally this morning. It turns out Europe is going through this massive heat wave and all their lakes and canals are drying up in the winter. Any protection is easy to do when you still have the asset, and we need to start looking at that.
Yeah. And I can't remember, it might have been a Circle Blue article or whatnot, but Michigan is projected to see a huge increase in climate migration from people south. And so there was a lot of discussion on whether or not our current infrastructure system is in place to accommodate those water needs. And so being able to really start just planning for those opportunities and what might come down the line is a huge thing. But yeah, you are not wrong. Wellhead falls through the cracks for everyone. So I was just really happy that I was checking my email, saw you guys were having open comments for this, and I was able to reach out.
Yeah, it's perfect timing on all this. So we'll our goal, I think, is, I'm looking at my calendar real quick. I think we're trying to shoot for a draft plan in early April.
Mhm.
So obviously, whatever you can get us between now and then, we'll do our damnedest to incorporate. Whether
In
it's
fact,
Go ahead.
we have a meeting later this morning to start to talk about what the plan's actually going to start to look like, a formatting meeting with our communications people. Like, we're starting to actually write the thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that meeting because we've
Yeah, you're
I've had to
welcome.
reschedule it like 4 times. This week has been a long month. But yeah, so the timing is great on this. And then, the other piece is one of the things that's always been kind of in the back of my head, and it's not really directly related to wellhead protection, but like, I feel like at some point it gets involved, is that because we have all these, we have a fair number of private wells and septic systems and stuff like that. And what does that look like in terms of not necessarily regulation, but how do we support those people going forward too? Because I don't think there's ever an expectation that we're going to get water and sewer out to the eastern third of the township. And so, what happens if somebody's well gets contaminated out there? What happens if there's one that we don't know about?
Have we ever done any kind of mapping of those wells?
No, but I think the county has it because you
Okay.
have to get
So
permits.
Okay.
each of
At
those
least
wells
locations.
should at least have a well logic record. Depending on how accurate that is, that's another question.
That's a whole other question.
But Michigan Geologic Survey is currently trying to solve that problem for the entire state.
That'd be nice.
But we do still have the groundwater survey project that you guys participated in back in, I think it was 2016. So we have the entire county finished. That project, that report was published in 2021, and we've been expanding to Clinton and Eaton counties. We are working with DHHS to try and get out some additional information to those homeowners that participated about going through their well-assessed pilot program, which is to help them educate themselves on how to properly maintain their well and know that information. So we're working on that. And then I am also currently trying to develop just long-term plans for what might happen in the future for resampling all those wells in Eaton County and making it more of a bit of a cycle and working with local townships to see what might come of that. But a lot of it does have to do with making sure that homeowners are aware of what's going on, that they actually do have a well, and that they're not getting water from BWL or Elmswa, even though sometimes they don't realize, and just trying to get that education out there. That's one thing, like I said, if you guys wanted to like develop some type of web page on your site to include some of that listed information, we have a lot of that on our page. It talks about how often you should inspect your well and your septic tank, links to properly licensed well drillers and septic providers and things like that. So we have all of that available for you guys to easily just reference and link to or grab and post it yourself.
Awesome. No, it's just one of those like
Yep.
out there topics that at some point I know we probably are going to have to get a little more involved with if we really are committed to maintaining sort of this rural part of town. But like, it's also just it's
It's
pain in
hard
the
because it's
ass.
not in the center of everything.
Yeah, and it's just individual property owners, and it's it just gets into a whole slew.
Who
of
also
problems.
then think whenever you try and talk to them about their well, you're trying to take it away from them and connect them to everything.
Yep.
So
You're just gonna extend the water line. No, man, I don't got $10 million floating around. I'm just trying to make sure that your water is safe.
Now, Is that model that Amanda's going to bring to the farmer's market? I'm not that familiar with it.
Are they bringing the model?
I think that's the plan. I don't know the name of it or actually how
Yeah,
it works.
the augmented reality sandbox.
It's
Yeah,
sweet.
it is a fun toy. The only issue with the sandbox, which I'm very jealous of, is that it does such a good job of educating about surface water and rain and lakes but there's not a good way to represent groundwater in a sandbox. So it doesn't tie as well into like private drinking wells and things like that.
Okay.
So,
I'm
but
just
yeah, super
curious about
excited
that.
that they're also bringing that to MSU Science Festival, first weekend of April. GMB is going to have a table there too. We're going to be doing Greater Lansing Saginaw Aquifer in a Cup, where kids or adults, if they're interested, can come kind of create a little aquifer and like put a well into the aquifer to access the water and everything. So
When is it coming to our farmers market? You made reference to that.
March 18th, I
March
believe, or
18th.
or 19th, I forget. Yeah, 18th, I believe.
I'll make the step kid go to that.
It's just a green team booth, and then Tri-County's got a couple of tables, and the Okemos Earth Club is going to be there. But the farmers market's sort of a way that we want to, do some of that education outreach for whatever the topic is, energy, water, groundwater. So just
yep,
we think
definitely.
about wells and septic systems. Maybe we can include some of that information.
We are my goal is before end of spring to have a finalized version of these kind of branded event kits. It's a entire setup that any GMB community can check out and use at an event. So I'll have like a tablecloth, standing banners, multiple copies of our printed out education materials that people can take. We have the groundwater simulator, which you can run water through and like you can see all the different layers. This would include the aquifer in a cup activity. And so we're trying to create this just all-inclusive resource for communities to then be able to take to like their town hall or at a farmer's market and set up a booth there so that people can just learn a bit more. And I'd be able to like come out and host a booth if you need it, or you can just leave it there and let people come and look at things what they want. So
one of the challenges, and this is getting a little bit off topic perhaps, is that the market is outdoors most of the year.
mm-hmm.
So having something that doesn't blow over in the wind is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Dealing with the
I very
elements
much
of wind and
appreciate your
water.
farmer's market. It's a nice one. I spent too
You're
much
welcome.
money at it.
You're welcome.
I don't know if I want to thank you for that. My pocketbook hurts sometimes.
Well, thank you for helping us address both of these plans.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
Yeah, definitely. I will send over that draft document I created. It isn't the full sustainability thing. I just kind of took the parts out of their water section and put it into a document, and highlighted in red what I suggested for adding. From my understanding, they didn't take anything out. They left it all as is. So they seemed happy with it, which I'm always pleased with. And then I will keep you guys up to date as we get more information about that boilerplate language for the master plan. And then if Ned wants to reach out about the water section, I'm always happy to chat with him.
Awesome.
Any